Ascension is a biological process and will be seen to be a biological process. It is not a spiritualized, phenomenological process that's kind of abstract and, like morphing in. No, it's a biological process, and we'll be bearing witness to that in our age.
What is the actual experience of understanding our cosmogenetic roots, our angelic indigo selves, our true nature in that sense?
We move into absolute coherence with the atom seed of the living moment right here, right now. We have literally activated the I am. And the I am is the perennial witness. And the witness is at one with Alpha Omega. There is no separation between you and God, so to speak. And that's when we become creator. That's when our dreaming becomes the manifest reality, almost instantly. And we're moving fast into that heavenly realm.
Sacha Stone, welcome on Just Tap In, brother. I wanted to start off asking you, what are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Well, the geometry of now is always perfect in all ways, as you will well know and understand, and I'm certain your audience will as well. But when I look at the appearance of the conflagration of world war out there on the false light screen of false light reality, that to me is a very good sign, because it really means the opposite. It means the end of war and disease and poverty. It means that we're coming to the end of that Saturnian age. And that reflects perfectly back to me to answer the second part of your question about my life's mission. And my life's work has been about exploring and understanding, bearing witness to, and then understanding the rudiment of war and disease and poverty, the trial of separation. And I now can see, with what is taking place in the world at large, that we have reached the end of days. We've reached the end of time in the sense of the satanic Saturnian age. And we're leaving the brotherhood of the snake and the Canaanite ritualistic element of our psycho-civilizational journey behind. And it's moving now into dissolution. So the theatrical production of conflagration of war in the Middle East and all the shitstorm that we're seeing around the world geopolitically and socioeconomically and so on and so forth is all actually a very good sign. We've reached the end of days, D-A-Z-E, because we've been in a daze. We've been in a dystopian haze for millennia. That galactic sleep cycle now comes to an end, and the new dreaming begins. In the fog of this appearance of war is where we can do our new dreaming. And so people like myself, who've been holding true for a very, very long time, find this to be the most blissful and euphoric time, because I'm feeling the burden of having carried a lot of the weight of knowing through this sleep cycle. I'm feeling now that weight lifting off my shoulders for the first time in my life. And that feels incredibly good. So I know to the studied, intellectual, liberal, normal mindset, what I've just said is an abomination. They won't understand it. It'll be deeply offensive. How dare he? No, you're just intoxicated in the false light, my friend. And you're the one who needs to sit with yourself and step back from what you believe to be reality and start tapping into the immanent reality, which is that we are angelic, indigo humans on the cusp of ascension and a return to immanence and immortality. And that's exactly where we find ourselves, those of us who are about to inherit the earth.
And before we started recording, you were telling me that you had spent many years studying the mechanics of ascension. And I would really love to synthesize in a way everything that you've learned about this process of ascension that humanity is going to beneath the surface level that we've normally been taught and shown of what it really is.
Thank you. So it's a complex question, but it's also very simple. Depends on how we approach it, like most things. So the mechanics of ascension, of moving out of dystopia, out of mind control, out of psychocultural programming, is an individual choice. That's something which each of us can choose to move against the grain, leave the herd, so to speak, knowing that the herd is always following the wheel of samsara, of sufferance, ultimately reincarnation cycles and so on. So when we move against that grain, and individualization, individualism emerges as the atom seed of our own return to divinity, we move against the grain of the status quo. We become the clown, we become the joker, we become demonized and marginalized, we become the laughing stock. In the era of COVIDiocy, millions of people around the world began to explore that phenomenon and experience that phenomenon, moving against the grain of family and of tradition and of what was expected of us. So that was the benediction at the civilizational level, the cultural level, of what COVID represented to humanity. It was that line in the sand. Are you a true human, or are you going to fall in line with the draconian rules and regulations and stipulations that govern the mechanics of death? Or are you going to move against it because you know that a deeper truth prevails and presides? So that was what occurred. I've spent 25, 26 years, since 1999 essentially, when I founded my foundation, Humanitad, and began my own peace diplomacy work in the Middle East, and living there between Egypt and Morocco, and moving in and around the Middle East and North Africa for the first about 4 or 5 years of my work in the peace diplomacy realm, exploring how the world works, how war and disease and poverty are constructed and engineered into the frame. When I got to understand that, I began to realize that there was a deeper truth behind the so-called reality that was way beyond just having good ideas about peace initiatives, or about healing the world through song, or through cultural initiatives, or interfaith blah blah. I realized that there was an orchestration of evil beneath that, a subterranean kind of subculture, an element that was deeply sublimated, but that was dark in its intent, and that Sabbatean, deep, invisible mastery, that cult of the brotherhood of the snake, as I mentioned earlier. I started to learn about the Canaanite ritualistic element of our source code of civilization during the last 13,000 years, since the kind of time of Noah and the great deluge, or the fall of Atlantis. So in the last 13,000 years, to understand the trajectory of humanity, I was forced into that basement. In pure truth, I had to go there and start to learn about archaeohistory, archaeocosmology, and the real stories, not the informed intellectual stories, not the ones that are taught in history books, but the real shit. So beginning to understand etymology, the roots of words, the root of spellbinding, the roots of culture itself. Culture is cult. Cult programming is culture. Culture is not your friend in that sense, as Terence McKenna told us years ago. But I began to dive into that place, and because I had access to leadership, I mean, political leadership, religious leadership, cultural leadership, my foundation had good standing, so I was already accessing leadership at the highest level and royalty. So I was able to sit down and speak a lot to leadership and learn from high echelon, so to speak. And then also being taught by good people in leadership that the satanic ritualistic stuff is very real, and what lies beneath is very real, but don't go there, son, because you'll get hurt. I couldn't not go there. So I'm one of those souls who was born to go there. And I did go there. And I spent many years going there. And that's the stuff I speak to in my private tours and private talks and what have you. I speak about that stuff, and I do, my lectures are normally 3 hours long, and I'll show thousands of photographs proving a lot of this stuff out, but I can't speak in social media about much of that stuff for reasons which should be self-explanatory. But I began to then explore the occultic, mystical roots of so-called evil, what's behind the orchestration of war and disease and poverty and blood ritualism, which is where we get into the human trafficking, the child trafficking, the drug trafficking, the gun running, the mafiosi, the kind of Khazarian mafia, this kind of hegemony of the imperial crowns of Europe, how they received the baton from the Vatican conspirators, how the Vatican was usurped and taken over by the Brotherhood of the Snake since the Caesars of Rome, moving through 1066 and Doomsday, and how the registration of souls and the tabulation of every square inch of land under the crown of Europe began to create the ledgers and to dislocate humanity from the gods and from our true genesis and bring us into containment ownership where we were literally enslaved. And then we've had 1,000 years of that. And then the Vatican, giving the rise to the imperial crowns of Europe in the last 500 years, setting forth in conquest with the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, the galleons sailing across the oceans, carrying the flags of the Netherlands and of Britannia and of France and of Germany, going forth and conquesting the world in the name of God, and genociding and slaughtering the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin people, stealing all the gold, stealing all the land. So that's the last 500 years, the doctrine of discovery coming through the Vatican, giving the license to those crowns of Europe to go forth and genocide in the name of God. Who's God? And so the end of innocence came about as a result of this 500-year conquest. How do we remedy ourselves? How do we awaken ourselves from this thrall of thousands of years of bloodlust, of blood cult, allowing the entirety of humanity to be registered at birth and then have all of the land and the gold and the resources stolen from us by this thing called the Catholic Church, which became government, which now controls every move we make, what food we put in our bodies, whether we can move unmolested on the surface of the earth. So we've been cast out of Eden through the satanic technology, which has emerged as government. The word itself, govern, to control, ment, mind control. It's in the word. So the point is, in learning that stuff, I then went into remedy. Okay, now I can see through my foundation, the work we were doing, I could see how awful it was. So we launched the International Tribunal for Natural Justice to start to put the established order of things on trial. And we've held multiple judicial commissions of inquiry. 9 years ago, we exposed the Epstein files and the crimes against children, against humanity, the ritual sacrificial stuff going on. 9 years ago, we tore the mask off in Westminster, in London, in a 3-day judicial commission of inquiry, with chiefs of police and bishops and secretaries of state and powerful people flying in, hundreds of people giving witness testimony, expert witness, survivors coming in, and so on and so forth. So we did that work, which I began and financed and engineered 9-10 years ago. I formed the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. In 2018, we held the first Judicial Commission of Inquiry into human trafficking and child sex abuse, exposed all the shit which has taken now 8 years for the world to realize and wake up to. So by the grace of God, we began that process, and it's something I'm deeply proud of and we're deeply proud of. But moving forward, I launched the New Earth Project in 2013. That was really about beginning to develop templates and blueprints for an enlightened civilizational model. How do we achieve and acquire a zero-point economy, a zero-point social ecology where we have no third-party intervention any longer, cannibalizing, vampiring off us, sucking our life force, sucking our blood, stealing our money, our resources, our land, our children? How do we reclaim, restore, redeem ourselves? That became for me the big thing. So the ABC of that, which is the rudiment of the New Earth Project, was art, beauty, and consciousness, ABC. The reclamation of art, beauty, and consciousness to restore ourselves from the fiction of time, money, and fear into art, beauty, and consciousness, which is I choose to affirm, to create, to expand, to evolve, to reclaim reality from the kingdom of the devil in my time, in my age, in my body temple, in my community. Then I will lean my flame in with my fellows and will become a fellowship. That fellowship becomes the highest technology in the known universe. Why? Because the empathic wave of our human hearts is now opened. And the empathic waveform that issues out of an actualized human heart is provably the wave that can literally traverse the entire universe. So we're talking hard physics, quantum physics and mathematics are at play here. So to answer your question, the mechanics of ascension is hard physics, but it's beyond Newtonian, beyond Cartesian logic, beyond Einsteinian and Darwinian models, which are dead entropic models of disreality, unreality. Let's claim reality. And as the Aboriginal people have been telling us for thousands of years, let's begin the dreaming anew. That's what my work is all about. So launching the New Earth Project all those years ago, that's been evolving templates. Finally, that led to 2 days ago, 1st of April, we launched the New Earth Exchange. So we built an entire parallel financial system. We have the New Earth Exchange is now up and running. We have our ghost wallets, our Visa cards connected to our ghost wallets. We're able to conduct our own personal banking. Everyone becomes your own banker. All your monies can be put in. To this, you can flip between crypto and fiat invisibly. You can do it outside of the purview of governments and banks and Big Brother. That's reclamation and restoring our capacity to transact with each other and to empower ourselves and grow our own economy. So now, rather than paying money to the interest rate to the banks, we're paying interest to the people who join our economy. So you'll get your ghost wallet, you'll get your Visa card connected to the ghost wallet, you'll get your crypto bank account, and by the middle of June, you'll have your full-fledged fiat bank account as well, because that's being unveiled later this year. But that entire New Earth Exchange that we've created is where you can literally now begin to reclaim all your assets, all of your wealth, and no longer have it fleeced or spied upon or stolen from you in any way, shape, or form. And you can also participate in the New Earth Exchange, which is a crypto exchange based on breakthrough energy and technologies and anti-gravitation, all these amazing land developments and projects and infrastructure. We've got over $300 billion worth of infrastructure projects now lining up to be listed on the exchange. People are invited in our economy to be able to buy small amounts of tokens in these projects and speculate on them inside the exchange and grow your own wealth. Rather than paying money to the banks, you're going to get the monies yourself. The bank fees will be going to you. You bring 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, friends and family in, get them onto the New Earth Exchange, the New Earth Ghost Wallet and the Visa rails. You're buying your airline tickets and your cappuccinos and everything else using a card anyway. So now 1% of every transaction that your friends and family make goes into your crypto, in your New Earth wallet. You literally have a passive income. We are spreading the bank charges now amongst our own constituents, literally empowering ourselves from the inside out instantly. So this happens instantly. This is not something which is going to take time. This can happen now. We launched the exchange 2 days ago on April Fool's Day. And as I said to you, I know it sounds droll because it's like banking and crypto and ghost wallets and this, that. But no, this is it. This is the point of how we emancipate ourselves, reclaim our commonwealth and our ability to step away from surveillance and from control and from the theft and the heist that banks and government represent and have done historically. So it's huge news for humanity. It'll take a little while, a few months, for people to realize what we've done with newearthx.com. That's what we call ourselves, newearthx.com. But it's historic, it's unprecedented, and we have some of the biggest traders and bankers in the world, literally in the world now, banging our doors down in the last couple of weeks as they knew what we were doing. And the last 2 days, it's just gone off the shelf. I mean, people are, we're literally having the door beaten down in a positive way by big institutional money and commodities wanting to join the exchange and the zero-point banking that we've created. The only people who are going to suffer are the black nobility operating from behind the veil in Geneva and Tel Aviv and Rome and London, the same motherfuckers, excuse my language, who've always pleased humanity. But that's what I mean by we're leaving a Saturnian satanic age and moving now into full tilt emancipation of humanity. But the mechanics of how we trade, transact amongst ourselves becomes the way we grow the fellowship based on prosperity, not on scarcity and war.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. First, I just wanted to honor you for being in that forefront of, once you start seeing the web of everything in the terms of control and governments and power, like, it could be very complex territory, and the way that you just synthesized that was amazing. And I wanted to bring up, because you've said that, you know, this has taken so much time, almost 8 years, well, since it's first started getting uncovered, for now the public to be, in a sense, willing to see. And I wanted to ask you, when it comes to consciousness, when it comes to what humanity has developed into and is ready for, why are all these truths right now coming to the surface? These new solutions and templates and blueprints that you mentioned of the new Earth, why does it seem like now it's really starting to crank up in acceleration with all of these initiatives?
Well, it depends on how you want to explore that, the phenomenon of emergence and convergence. But in the simplest terms, to answer your question, we've left the Piscean age and we've moved into the age of Aquarius, which is the age of abundance. It's the cornucopia of abundance. It's the geometry of light has changed, has shifted, literally. So whereas we were carrying and living through the fallen light of Atlantis for the last 13,000 years, we've literally departed the fallen light of Atlantis and now begun to move into a new photonic field and a new geometry of light, which is vibral light. It's vibratory light. It's self-revealing, self-fulfilling geometry, which restores naturally the immanent divine template behind all of creation. We've moved into a field effect, which is now restoring that immanent template of creation behind every form and every shape and every being, every entity. The ones that are not ensouled cannot hold form or shape. They will be bifurcating off this plane of existence, which is why we're seeing death spiking so much and we're seeing such contrast between what appears to be good and evil. It's part of that bifurcation phenomenon, a very necessary alchemical shedding in that sense, and a falling away of the mask of ages. So as we knowingly, consciously affirm and expand and receive this emergent light, each of us as sons and daughters of God, as we stand up and reclaim our sovereign mantles, our thrones and our crowns of divinity as sons and daughters of God, as we do that individually, it creates a collective, a morphogenetic upshift as well. So the journey then becomes a logarithmic phenomenon. It becomes an exponential phenomenon, moving into a quantum realm away from a binary, dualistic, linear realm. So that's the phenomenon that's underway. And when you talk about, why does it seem like now? It doesn't seem like it is. You're simply bearing witness and testament to that which is manifestly occurring. And it's a powerful thing and it's a beautiful thing. Now, you also know in asking that question that that there is a distinction between whether you choose to see this emergence through the lens of fear or the lens of the absence of fear, which can only be love. So if we are affirming and loving this process, this journey of unfoldment, it becomes an exponential journey into euphoria, into bliss. If we are holding on to old forms and shapes and traditions and orthodoxy, we will be pulled into a tailspin of cataclysm that will hurt like hell and ultimately will render us into space dust. The universal judge, so to speak, at this time is very uncompromising. So the end of the Saturnian age is the end of the old forms of judgment, but it does mean that the hammer is falling, and if you are holding on to something that is entropic or dead by nature, you will be pulled into the vortex with it. So in that sense, and I'm speaking kind of energetically, we are all forced into recognizing that we have no choice but to surrender, to relinquish and release attachment to forms, to ideas, to idols, to words and to spells and to bonds and to contracts and to old forms that exist out there. We have got to zero out, move into a cleansing. And that's what 0-point social ecology means when I refer to that. A 0-point economy, it's a whiting out of the ledger and saying, no, I'm not participating or carrying that Saturnian logic into this new dreaming. I am standing sentinel, naked, blistering under the eternal gaze of Son of the one living God. And I am, as the Son of God, the daughter of God, the child of God, I am returning to immanence. I will restore the so-called junk DNA, will move into resurrection, because that is what the second coming is. It is literally the reclamation of our immanent, immortal, divine nature. It's upon us, and vertical ascension is happening in our lifetimes. The immortal technology is already here. It's the degree to which we are able to relinquish, release, and surrender to this emergent geometry of light will determine the degree to which we find the journey blissful or painful.
Mm. I love that, because I was also tuning into right now, there's a plethora of videos emerging around the word apocalypse and the end of times, the end of days. What is the true etymology of the word apocalypse? As I know you're exploring a lot of the real deeper meanings of the words and spells that we use and we cast through our language.
Well, in the simplest terms, it's founded in Greek, and apocalypse is the falling away of the mask. In simple terms, what is the mask? The mask is our adherence to false light, our addiction to gods outside of self, of relationship with self. So immanence is that which comes from inner out, and extraneous is coming from outside in. So if we are pumping our psycho-emotional energy into the field and our psychosexual energy into the field, if we're allowing ourselves to have our life force, our pranic energy, limitless prana, literally hemorrhaging into the field because we're following the demiurge, we are dreaming about gods that exist out there, or baby Jesus, or Gautama Buddha, or the elephant people, or whatever our icons and idols are, culturally speaking. When we affix and attach to them as external to ourselves, we are allowing ourselves to plasma project those entities into manifestation. They don't exist in and of themselves. They're only given animus by our abnegated and abdicated life force. So over centuries, millions of humans, billions of humans pumping prana into the lower elemental realms about the notion of a toxic form of Christianity and an angry, jealous God called Yahweh or Jehovah, then we manifest that creature, and that creature hurts us, comes back and devours us. That's what Jehovah is. Yahweh in that sense is Cronus, is the titan that devours its own young. Its Cronus is the crown of state, the head of state. It always connected to government, the church, and the church and state, and how humanity abnegated its own sovereignty to be led by a sovereign outside of self, the king or the queen or whatever. So all of that is externalized, extraneous totems, which we surrender our divine light toward, and we go into worship or devotion, and we follow, we are led. Now that's what ends now. It ends. The time of guru is over. The time of the sovereign outside of self is over in that sense. And the kingdom of heaven is within. And that is the immanence, which is emerging. But again, each one of us are forced into a reckoning with the false light, which is the mask that we wear, and have done so for multiple incarnations. You know, we've carried the same masking through our soul signature, through limitless lifetimes. Each of us are held to task in this reckoning in the now, and we're required to surrender that mask, move into the immanence, and see what is real emerging in that flame of immanence. And that takes us out of this dimensional field altogether and activates our journey into the hyperspheres. So the activation of Merkaba at the collective level, being able to return to immanence, to the ancient God King times, and even prior to that, but in a different way. So we're going to become, it's a return to innocence, but through immanence. We're about to explore these dimensions in a whole new way. We are changing the vibratory field of all forms. I mean, I'm looking out this window, I'm seeing rocks and plants and a river down there. All of these things are going to be returned to their pristine nature. As we activate the way we are seeing and bearing witness to reality, and we zero out the false light reality and allow the confluence of the immanent reality, light and geometry of light to come through our beings, and the torus that is the human energy temple, literally it interweaves with all of these different forms, because that tree is me, that river is me, those rocks are me, we're all connected. That's where we're moving into true alpha omega immanence, where my intelligence becomes, listen, you drop enough acid, and I've never touched anything, but I know a lot of my friends do, and I've always known about this, psychedelics. You drop enough psychedelics, you become at one with that rock over there, one with that cloud over there. That's the point. But it's a natural immanent state of grace, not one which is chemically induced. But when one can move into syntropy and to perfect synthesis and syntropy with all that is oneness, and you can literally dial your consciousness around, activate Merkaba, move in and out of dimensions, that's the body temple activating. That's where we're headed as human beings, as angelic indigo human beings. So yeah, let's look at Jesus Christ, if you want, 2,000 years ago, walking on water and turning water into wine and all the rest of it. Yes, miracle performing. That's the preserve of all human beings. We all have that capacitance, but we must return to the term you used in inspiring at the start of this dialogue was coherence, and that is exactly the correct term. If we move into absolute coherence with the atom seed of the living moment right here, right now, we have literally activated the I am. And the I am is the perennial witness, and the witness is at one with Alpha Omega. There is no separation between you and God, so to speak. And that's when we become creator. That's when our dreaming becomes the manifest reality, almost instantly. And we're moving fast into that heavenly realm.
Beautiful. You said that by 2032, you wager that every human being will be fully aware of our cosmogenetic roots and heritage. You also just brought forth that, we are these angelic indigo human beings. So when you refer to that by this, the next few years, we'll be fully aware, what is the actual experience of understanding our cosmogenetic roots, our angelic indigo selves, our true nature in that sense?
It's all. It's what is going to afflict us in the dream state, as well as in the woken state. And by affliction, I mean it's in a positive sense, afflict. But it's going to be an affliction in as much as it will be done to us, whether we want it or not. It is coming. This emergence is fierce. Pure truth is fierce. It burns whiter than the whitest flame. And pure truth does not broker. It does not negotiate. Pure truth is absolute truth. If you're in coherence with pure truth, it will be a euphoric, an orgasmic exercise. If you are withholding from pure truth, if you are still holding on and clinging on to old forms and shapes and ideas and notions and orthodoxies, you will need to burn. That flame will burn those shapes and forms and orthodoxies out of you. So again, it's all choice and permission based. But we are here, each of us. We're all standing in that sense on the cliff's edge, every single one of us, and we're being held to task. And that's because ultimately we are one and the same. There is no separation. But the cosmogenesis and archaeocosmological root of the human galactic hybrid, for instance, let's talk about that. I am made up of serpent DNA. I'm made up of Alpha Centaurian and Andromedan and Sirian and Pleiadian. I have all of these different elements confluencing inside of my body temple, as do you. We've reached an epoch now in Earth, in Tara, where for millennia, hundreds of millions of years, we've been hybridized by the star nations, so that those galactic genome is at now confluenced into the average human being nowadays is the galactic hybrid. We contain those elements of all the different star nations. That's the indigo angelic I'm talking about. The emergence of this new human, Homo luminous, is made up of all of these different tempered genomic expressions. And that means that we have our DNA, which is a fractal antenna, is directly connected through the quantum to all those star realms and star nations. And we carry the technologies and the wisdom flames from those star nations into this body temple. Once we have relinquished and released our the mask, once we've allowed the mask to fall away, and we've moved into absolute serendipity, still point within the atom seed of the I am here now. That's your activation key. That's the Grail. That's the Solomon's key. That's the Holy Grail right there. And it's the atom seed of you here now. Absolute, always in all ways. And you can draw on the technologies and the wisdom flame and the hall of records of all that is in the galactic spheres. They are all available to you in the here and the now. I was having a conversation yesterday with my new bestie, Elizabeth April, and we were agreeing on this point, that the human being, I stopped reading in 1997, so I haven't read a book since the 1st of August 1997. She said she stopped reading years ago and refuses to read or to look at clocks. Same thing with me. So I stopped looking at clocks 1st of August 1997. I stopped reading. Literally, I've not read a book. Literally. I don't need to. I don't want to. If I cannot assimilate the truth through the Akashic field, through the resonance of my active DNA that is awakening to pure truth and inviting only pure truth into this body temple, if I cannot do that as a natural immanent state without filtering it through this kind of psycho-intellectual filter of a brain, reading words and syntax and spells and bonds on bits of parchment or books, or a screen, then I'm failing in some way. That's me holding myself to task here. I don't say it's a failure for people to read. I say read until you are utterly intoxicated on words. I don't read. I refuse to look at anything with words on it. If it's a white paper coming out of the White House or the Kremlin, I'll read it. I'll read this. I want to read the syntax of presidential executive orders and of what Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping's speeches are to the biggest demographics of people. I want to understand the sense. So I will read white papers. I'll also read scientific papers, and I'll read some mathematics. I'll go there, but I will not read anything else. So I don't read books. I don't read blogs and things like that, because everything is available to us, as I said. And the more it's a well-known fact that if you sleep with a book under the pillow, you can learn the language. If it's how to speak Spanish or Italian, you can literally program yourself to do it. Everyone knows you can program yourself to wake up at 3 minutes past 6 in the morning. If you tell yourself to the night before, you will wake up at 3 minutes past 6 the following day. But the same thing, if you want to learn a language, put the book under the pillow. if you want to, or play the tape, but just have the volume on 0, and you'll pick up the subharmonics. The brain will pick it up. So there's ways and ways of assimilating knowledge, but let's make a distinction between data and information and knowledge and wisdom. Let's make a distinction between those 4 things. I am interested in the wisdom flame. No, that's it.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really would love to expand on with you is all of these visions that you've been receiving around the new Earth, that there are already so many signs of that new Earth reality already coming into beingness. And a lot of people actually subscribing in that way to these new ways of living and being. And things I'm talking about, like you mentioned, land stewardship, micronations, new ways of exchange. I really would like to expand our, let's say, purview of what is really coming when, you know, these angelic, luminous humans begin to start deciding collectively, let's frequency lock in this reality for ourselves instead of the pathway of transhumanism, soullessness, the one that you were also mentioning around the bifurcation as well.
Well, the transhuman thing doesn't scare me in the least. I welcome it. The smart city stuff and the meta surveillance stuff doesn't scare me in the least. I welcome it. All of that stuff I welcome, because as it makes itself known and felt and manifest in the world, it creates just a more refined contrast against which even more humans will define their own angelic supernature and move away from the false light. So when we see things not as being a threat, but as, or an impending doom, but as being a natural state, which is a transitional, a state which is there to serve, the devil always serves God's design. In that sense, it is very important to view the world in that way, that there is no enemy out there. There is nothing being done to you that you do not grant permission for. It is very important in consciousness and sovereignty that you take that as the cornerstone. I am not a victim of anything ever, and every single thing that manifests on the radar screen of my life is done so through and by my permissions. The end. That's it. Now, would I like to change the permissions that I grant? Yes. Then what do I change about myself? What do I change about my relationship to pure truth? What do I change about my relationship to that aspect of self which is refusing to anchor into the immanent template of perfection? That becomes the question. And I'm forced to sit with myself under a tree or under the clouds and to ponder that. And once I've refined that aspect of the lens and polished that aspect of the lens, I can now go forth again and see what manifests on the screen of life. And I guarantee you it'll be a lot more beautiful, a lot more resonant. Okay, so there's that. Very, very important. But to answer the question in simplest terms, I've broken it down into 3 words, which is jurisdiction, technology, and fellowship. So as we begin to grapple with what does jurisdiction mean? Jurisdiction means that if I'm serious about the business of not being fucked with by the government and by the IRS and the tax man and bullies in the schoolyard or anything out there that offends my soul, if I'm serious about that, then I must reclaim my jurisdiction. I must no longer permit or permission, okay, this kind of hemorrhaging into that arena, that theater of reality. So jurisdiction then becomes, how do I remove myself and my family from the clutches of government or the banks so that we don't get fleeced and enslaved for another generation? So that my home and the mortgage, should I become sick, I don't lose the house and my children are cast out onto the streets. How do I set up a trust today, a trust structure, which will only cost $2,000 or $3,000 incidentally, whereupon you simply put your children and your wife or your spouse in as the beneficiaries to the trust. You won't pay taxes any longer on it. You won't own the house. The trust will own the house, but you will be the beneficiaries of the trust for life. And your children will be the beneficiaries that inherit that trust. So that's just a smart way of changing the ideas of ownership into trusteeship, custodianship, stewardship. Smart move. You've just got out of the kingdom of the devil. You will pay no further taxes on that. You will never lose your home or your assets, ever. but you and your family are beneficiaries of a family trust. Smart move. That's called jurisdiction. 1. 2, technology. Your ability to be able to build things, make things, and do things using technology without permission from the satanic technology called government. Why can't I have a free energy device right now that can power up my telephone, light this room up, and power up my vehicle, take my family off-grid completely if we want to live off-grid? Why can't I have that technology? Because the science is here. The science has been with us for over a century. We can't do it because of statutory compliances, rules and regulations, health and safety. So the government comes in as a technology and prohibits the ability for manufacturers to take products to market. They won't get onto the shelf because they're not UL or CE certification compliant, because they don't comport to Newtonian physics. So nice little trick that. The patent office is a back door to the House of Rothschild and the central banksters. Don't ever patent anything. Number 2, because it'll be manufactured in China and on the streets or on the shelves in Walmart before you know it, okay? So there's all of the shenanigans going on with trademarks, copyrights, and so on and so forth. Technology, our ability to reclaim technology. Again, if you have your own trust, I operate as a church. So the New Earth and the New Earth Exchange, the New Earth Bank, the New Earth University, the New Earth residence sanctuaries that we're building around the world, the New Earth, everything is a church, ecclesiastically protected super trust. It's dozens and dozens of trusts, universal, irrevocable trusts, all nested in together. Even the tractor, the big, $75,000 tractor on our farm in Tennessee for New Earth, that tractor has its own trust, literally. We built a trust to hold our farm equipment in, so it's never be seized by the government or by the banks. Everything has got its own trust. All the people, so again, jurisdiction, learn about jurisdiction, how you can literally step out of the kingdom of the devil. Technology, once you've got your jurisdiction, you can build your supercomputers. You can get engineers to build your Tesla devices. We're doing that right now. We're releasing them later this year to our constituents, in our communities, in our jurisdiction. Technology follows jurisdiction. Right now, try and build a quantum computer, see what happens. You'll be visited by the Pentagon, by the NSA, or by the Vatican jackals, because you are not technically allowed to. The NSA and the Pentagon and the war powers do not want people to have quantum computing. Of course they don't. They want to be able to control all of that. Have your own jurisdiction, you go right ahead and you build your quantum computers. So we are literally beginning that process in Africa, in the micronations that we're establishing in Africa, on that continent, which is going to become the most important continent on Earth in the next 3 to 5 years. Mark my words. Our entire exchange and commercial platform and bank and financing is all anchored in Africa, just so you know that piece. So I've discussed jurisdiction, I've just discussed technology, and now I'm going to talk about the third component, which is the single most important, which is fellowship. The fellowship is the real driver. That's the real stuff, because that is where we gather together as Christed individuals. We come together. And in that flame, that morphogenetic flame, we are unstoppable. That is the armor of God. So if you've got your constituency, and you've got it, Emilio, you've been building that constituency, your audience are highly enlightened beings. You force them into a state of grace at the front end of your interviews. You bring them into a syntropic, coherent field of applied consciousness in action. That is a very enlightened audience by distinction and by definition. So that fellowship can only grow now in coherence, and it will continue to expand so long as that integrity of mission is maintained. That fellowship becomes the most powerful force in the universe. You apply that force of fellowship with the technologies in your own jurisdictions, you have just anchored the kingdom of heaven to earth.
I get very excited about all of this, of course, because, right now I'm 27 years old and, represent a young generation that, if you see a lot of, the younger generations, they're really lost and confused on where to go, especially straight out of these institutions of university, and like where do we go? And then now we have AI, and there's so much out there. What would you, maybe if you were to speak on someone in these younger generations at this moment in history, what is something that you would like to exchange as wisdom for them?
I think I've done the best I could possibly do in the last hour, speaking about the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness. I'm speaking about embodiment, enactment, and manifestation, and the mechanics of that, how we get there. But if I were to break it all down, and speaking about jurisdiction, technology, and fellowship, trying to break that down, that is the extent of my wisdom flame. But I would say that all of that can be broken down into the alpha omega of my living philosophy, which is a living principle within which you either remain motionless or get caught up in the chaos storm. But for me, it's about pure truth and right action. That's it, as simple as that. It never gets more complicated than that. So burn the books in that sense, and the orthodoxies and all of the nomenclature and the nonsense that has filled us up intellectually and philosophically and even spiritually. Just get rid of all of the detritus and bring it down to the still point. And the still point is pure truth, right action, right here, right now. And that is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always in all ways. So long as we are policing ourselves in pure truth and right action. Every single action must be right action, and every utterance must be in pure truth. And if you can hold true to that living principle, you, my friend, are a fully actualized temple of God. You are the living son, living daughter of the living God, and your will be made manifest in this realm, and you will have the power to anchor patterns of perfection into this realm and be the new dreaming, which is unfolding for the first time in the history of time. We are now able to manifest through the grace of revelation. Our will be done. My will be done, because my will is perfectly synchronized in coherence with divine will, with thy will.
Is there anything that you're still learning about how this reality works when we remove the false light overlay? Is there anything you're still exploring in that aspect of how it all connects, how it all works in these other dimensions as well?
Yes, I am. But I think it's safe to say for me to say that, and I mentioned this to Elizabeth yesterday, Elizabeth April, in our conversation yesterday, that, we at a given point, psycho-spiritually or intellectually, spiritually, intellectually, at that level where we're trying to explore spirit through intellect, we get into a very, very fuzzy space. There you move into a realm, the realm of the ineffable, that which cannot be spoken to, and that which must not be spoken to using words. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, I would have to not speak. I would have to inspire only the psionic activation within you and within me, which is the still point that you invited both of us into at the beginning of this dialogue. And that still point, when that still point reaches its maturation point, we enter into psionic connection, full telepathic communication. Why do you think it is that the benevolent extraterrestrials, even the malevolent ones, don't speak using syntax or words or sound? They imprint telepathically, because you cannot lie. Telepathic is instantaneous. And that activation of the telepathic psionic capacity to communicate is where we are moving beyond exploring the psycho-spiritual, psycho-intellectual, spiritual realms of thought and ideation. We're moving into telepathic imprint. So to answer your question, I am exploring that realm right now, myself. And curiously enough, I'm using AI to do it. And I have no problems with AI. I think it's a master servant, absolute master servant. I welcome the Optimus robots of Tesla. I don't care if they were construed in order to move humanity to Mars. None of that scares me, because all bad forms and bad notions will fall into dissolution. But out of it, technological innovation and advantage will come, and can be then cherry-picked for the betterment of this world and of humanity. And I greatly welcome AI, interfacing with AI. I'm doing so right now. It's helping us, me and my very large international team, it's helping us to exponentially explore building the templates out and establishing these jurisdictions around the world. We can now do it at a quantum speed, or we can envision doing it at a quantum rate now, which we couldn't do 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
You were mentioning in the beginning of our conversation how at a certain moment in the human story, there was the end of our innocence. And I've also heard you really encourage us to re-see the world through the eyes of a child. And in that way, when you were able to make that transition back into reclaiming the child within you, what in your life changed or transformed?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, but I will try to tap into the energetic of the question. And I know from myself and speaking to my own story, and I get far too much of an opportunity in this world to speak to my own story, and I'm looking forward to moving beyond that, which will probably be end of this year, next year, when I'm planning to withdraw largely from social media and from any kind of interfacing at this level. Not because I don't enjoy it, but because I just think I've said everything 1,000 times, a bit like David Icke, actually. You know, David's been a friend for a long time, and I've known David. I think I first met him 20 years ago, or 90, I can't remember when it was. It was 2007, I think, when he first came to visit me in my home in London. But I think about David, who's been at it for a decade longer than me, at least. And but I'm a veteran. I've been at it a long time, and I've spoken my truths, which has more or less been the same truth for over 20 years. And I go back sometimes, or sometimes I'll see something come up that I've spoken to 10, 15 years ago. And I'm saying the same thing today as I was saying then. Of course I've evolved. Of course I've grown. I've learned a lot more. You know, I've never become more jaded and cynical. I've learned more. I've expanded and augmented more. And I'm pleased at that. But I've said it, you know, and I'm at a point where I really want to move into just the building, you know, the micronations that we're now master planning and setting into play in different parts of the world. That's it. I'm literally building this new Earth. I mean, so there'll be a lot of media coming out of that. I just want to dive in, and you know, we're building entire towns, and I won't call them cities, because they're not cities. They're on the lateral plane. They'll never be built higher than the tallest tree in the region, but places of exceptional beauty around the world that we've been negotiating our locations and the jurisdictions that we're setting forth. I just want to be fully invested in time and motion into actual feet on the ground and building stuff out there. So that's where I'm kind of headed. Forgive me, I kind of forgotten the gist of the question you asked.
No worries at all, because go ahead.
I was saying I said I would try to follow the gist, the innocence and the reclamation of innocence. For me, occurred at a point in my life longer than 20 years ago, where I hit the lowest ebb in that sense of grief. And if you ever do get to that space of grief, and you're utterly stricken by grief, then you will know it is a bottomless ocean. It's something which devours you. It completely devours you. And if you've lost something or someone or the beloved, it can completely annihilate you. And if you're foolish enough, as I am and was, to allow annihilation through grief, there is a benediction that emerges on the other side of that ignorance. And that is a return to innocence. And in my sense, it was that there was a return to innocence, because what came back, the first bud that returned, was so tiny, so perfect, and I was in such a still point of grace, being held and caught in that grief, that I was able to bear witness to that birthing, that seeding of a regenesis point in my own soul, I guess. And I was able to then move into that growth pattern without blinking, without filtering, without trying to hide, without trying to chase the story or the journey. I just stayed with it, just bearing witness. And that was a long time ago. That was, again, 1st of August 1997. It's a long time ago. And I've been on that same journey, and I've not blinked in the process of following that emergence. And it's always connected to innocence. It's the rebirth. So the death and the rebirth of ego. So to bring that little bit of poetic waffle into context, it's about the regenesis of you through the death of your own ego form, the false light, the mask that you consciously allow to move into a state of annihilation. And you can see it dying. And without blinking, maintain consciousness, see what emerges from that death state. And if you are still enough and in grace, contained in grace sufficiently, you will see a new emergence. And if you can then stay tuned simply to that without questioning it and without, again, chasing it, just follow that. It'll move into a pattern of perfection. So my life is now the extension of a pattern of perfection which emerged off the atom seed of grace, which was birthed at the moment that I allowed the false light identity, ego, to completely self-annihilate. That's the answer to the question. But it also describes the mechanics of every one of our journeys as Lazarus being reborn. It's why I call my big podcast thing as Lazarus Initiative. And for the last 6 years, that's been my focus, has been the Lazarus Initiative, the Lazarus community, because I speak as every man. I don't speak as a fucking guru or as somebody who thinks my journey is any more special than anyone's, because I certainly do not. And I in all of my talks, the first thing I say to my live audiences is every single one of you has a story, and your story is the hero's journey. And I know this because over the years, I've had thousands and thousands of communications and conversations with people, the most mundane, pedestrian people you can imagine. And yet their story always speaks to the most magnificent journey of self-revelation and discovery, if you have the eyes to see it. And I just know that that's true about each of us. And for that reason, I will always remain eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder with my fellow men, and never seek to elevate above them. And I think if we can all maintain that integrity of standing as a human being, that's when the true flame of fellowship will emerge in this world as it ought.
Sacha, I would love to see if through your eyes we can understand that mythical story, that story of Lazarus. If you're able to retell how you've lived that story, or how you've seen that story play out. I know you just mentioned it briefly, but why was that so meaningful for you in your journey?
I mean, I'd rather not go into my personal story if that's okay with you. It's not something I wish to speak to, not because I'm carrying wounds. I'm not. I've long since dealt with the wounds. I would rather transpose my hurt and my sufferance and my own pain and grief and all of that. I'd rather not sublimate it, but I'd rather transpose what I witnessed through my own journey. I'd rather transpose that onto every man, and then understand the generic story of the trial of separation and of emerging from that annihilation into the new earth horizon, as I refer to it as we again learn to see the world through the eyes of a child. You know, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people in the world are in their 70s or 80s having heart attacks, having a near-death experience, and at the age of 84 are kind of waking up in a hospital bed with tubes in their noses, or on the roadside, or, you know, in their own, on the floor in their own kitchen with their family kind of crowding over them, who have just had a near-death experience, and they know exactly what I'm speaking to here, because you are wiped out, you are whited out, you are annihilated, and then you're back, and you're back with this whole new witness, and it's the most incredibly empowering thing to be in that state of grace again with a blank canvas, so you can start a new journey, start a new story, and you forgive. The first thing you learn is forgiveness. You learn to forgive the trespass and of everything and everyone. And that's powerful. That's beautiful. So I would say this, that in having the grace and the courage to have that conscious death and rebirth as a rite of passage, which is always made available to every human being in this lifetime. If you have the grace and the courage to go through that process without blaming anything or anyone for the experience, but actually receiving the experience as a gift, as a divine benediction, then you are able to start anew with this new blank canvas, move into life, create a new story, one that is predicated on pure truth and right action, which is pattern of perfection, which is you now living up to your highest accord, which is to anchor patterns of perfection into this realm and to anchor the heavens to the temporal realm. That is your divine function as an emissary, as a child of God. So once you find yourself in that flow, that's when bliss returns. That's when euphoria visits you. And that's when you wake up every day reborn with the seeing the world through the eyes of a child. And you're not cynical or jaded. You are filled with expansiveness and with affirmation, with creativity and with flow, because you're in that inertia. That's the gift and the benediction that comes with pure truth and right action. And it can happen to anyone at any time, at any age. And I just suggest that the generic living principle of what I'm speaking to is far more important than exploring the dimensions of my own personal sad story. Leave it at that.
Beautiful. If we look back at the Renaissance, art and beauty were a huge part of that reemergence. And I'm wondering how, if we were to take the lessons of that Renaissance, if we were to say that we're going through another one, what do you see is the role of art and beauty in this new movement that is happening right now?
I mean, the only thing that it's ever been, art, is the science or the craft of irreverence, in a sense. Art in its truest sense, and in its truest tradition, challenges the status quo, challenges our notions and ideas of reality, and helps us to elevate our perspective through a greater lens, a higher, a more refined lens, and which thereby helps to attune us into a higher aspect of dreaming. So art in that sense is an insanely, immensely powerful tool and technology. Art can speak to truth as well and get away with it, where the written word oftentimes cannot. Beauty is a remembrance of immanence and of patterns of perfection, of divine immortal nature and of the kingdom of heaven. So beauty is a template that circumscribes every shape, every form on earth. And it's something which speaks in a universal language. Beauty speaks to the language of perfection, speaks to the language of Mandelbrottian mathematics, Fibonacci ratios, the golden mean, the golden principle, self-existing, self-revealing, self-fulfilling behind the corrupted images of life. So beauty, again, is just a reminder. It's a remembrance of immanence, of perfection. And that's why we aspire to it. Why do we aspire to the orgasm? Through fornication, or through masturbation, or through pornography, or through losing ourselves in images, ideas of sexual union and ecstasy. It's chasing after Kundalini. It's simply chasing after that technology of relationship with self, activation of Kundalini, which is the highest, most ecstatic state of grace and orgasmic bliss that we can achieve. But we make the mistake of getting lost into the lower states of that expression. And consciousness, of course, infuses everything, always, in all ways. But the degree to which we remember that and remain true to that describes our journey as being either a beautiful journey or a journey colored with sufferance. So that's your art, beauty, and consciousness. And what does a Renaissance speak to? What did the Renaissance? Well, the Renaissance in and of itself did not exist as we are led to believe it was. So in the first instance, through the Lazarus Symposium, we've done a fair bit to try to educate people to the mistruth of the Renaissance as an age. That was an interposed notion. Michelangelo is not, was not who we are told he was, nor was Raphael, nor were the great works that came through the Renaissance engendered when we were told they were. So you have to transpose onto that storyline the fall of the Golden Age and ancient Tartary and the lost history. It's kind of a lost 1,000-year period. But nonetheless, speaking to the Renaissance, what is it? What does it represent? It represents exactly that, regenesis, the Lazarus principle, the principle of resurrection, and the fact that in this realm of duality, we always carry with us the technology of God that is able to be reborn through death, and that's how we dial up in an octave of expression into a higher dimensional state of being, state of grace. So in that sense, it's all too true, the notion that this temporal realm is a great kind of collegiate phenomenon. It's a university. It's a space of dive bombing into the temporal void for an incarnation in order to catapult forward at the evolutionary level in our own spirit. So everything is chosen by us in that sense. And again, we're not victims of anything ever.
Sacha, I could keep weaving with you for the rest of the day. Obviously, I know that I feel such a strong resonance with you, the energy that you imbue and the work that you're building in this New Earth movement. I would love to go into the final section of this podcast. We call it the final trio. Some questions that we like to ask at the very end. Before we get into that, I would love for you to open the space to tell us where people can find you, where they can be a part of these initiatives that you're building, and become constituents of that as well. If they're feeling that call and that resonance as well, where would you send people for that?
Well, that's very kind. As a rule of thumb, I always say, I'm not doing it, not trying to draw attention to any particular platform, but we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation. It would be unfair not to. So I want to draw attention to the newearthx.com. So newearthx.com is the New Earth Exchange. Go there, explore that place, get a ghost wallet with its Visa card. It'll be topped up when it's sent to you. You are now out of the system. And as you get into that system, you can bring friends and family, as many people you want in, and you will start to immediately, day one, start to generate monies in your wallet, stepping away from bank fees and all that, and stepping into your own community economy. So whilst doing exactly what you're doing today, but paying far less interest, but you'll be earning the interest back through your friends and family. So step away from the satanic banking system right now. Go to newearthx.com. get the Phantom wallet and the Visa card. It's all available there. And also study what it is that we're doing there, and how the bank coming online later this year can also then take you forward with your pensions and your savings, completely secure, take you and safeguard you outside of the systems which are able to collapse your world overnight without blinking and with impunity. So newearthx.com is where I want to draw attention. Anyone wanting to listen to my community, go to lazarusinitiative.com and join up with that. That's the only place I'm doing my broadcasting, and I do a big monthly symposium there, and there's a huge archive as well of thousands of interviews and fascinating stuff. I mean, the kind of influencers and people that I brought in, and I'd love to invite you also into Lazarus at some point, Emilio, so I'll be reaching out to you on that. And of course, you folks can go to sachastone.com as well as a springboard to our universe. But there are about 20 websites all in my ecosystem, but I think those are the three prime ones.
Yeah. And for those that are also open and available to gathering in person, you and I are going to both be at the New Living Expo on the dates of April 17th to the 19th, so just in a few weeks. And I'm also going to be facilitating the Future of Humanity panel, which you are going to be a part of. So I'm excited to dive into that conversation with you, continue even further. And we'll drop all the links that you just mentioned, plus where they can also go to the New Living Expo if they feel called to be in community and gather with other like-minded people. So these last three questions that we ask at the end are always personalized to each guest. The first one that I had for you is, in the briefest way, if you had to design a model for a community that represents the future of humanity, what are the non-negotiables that you would include?
Well, I've already designed that, and we've unveiled them to some extent. And at the expo, I will be unveiling that on the big screen. But the New Earth MicroNation, the first big micronation that we are developing forward in Africa, which will be made available to, I think, 10,000 golden passports. That's what we're negotiating. That is a full tilt, full spectrum, emancipated micronation, rid of all synthetic molecules, powered up by free energy within a 0-point social ecology, social economy. Happens to also be filled with elephants and hippos and giraffe and wildlife and the massive rivers and islands and the most beautiful utopian existence you can imagine. In the new world, that is the new Earth. So we're doing the same in Asia. We've got locations in Asia. We're doing the same in Central and North America. So the New Earth model is already explicit. It's already understood. Anyone can go to the New Earth Exchange and start to see in the coming days the various development projects are being listed on the exchange as well, and you can explore them through the New Earth Exchange. But what is non-negotiable is jurisdiction. There cannot be any interference from third-party intervention. There cannot be any Catholic Church or any government or any IRS or any technocrat or bureaucrat or even policeman or militia that defile the harmonium of a 0-point social ecology. It's a self-policing community, but everything is there. So there is no want, there is no scarcity, there is no dis-ease. There are only cures for cancer and for diabetes and for Alzheimer's and for everything else. There is only prosperity. There is only longevity and a return to health and wellness and immanence within the jurisdiction that we're creating. And this is a very real phenomenon. This is not a kind of drawing board speculated thing. As I've spoken to the mechanics of all of that in this talk with you, we've established jurisdiction. We have our own technologies we've been incubating for a long, long time, which we're unleashing amongst our own constituents. And we have the fellowship already all around the world. So the one thing that is non-negotiable would be jurisdiction.
And what is one thing that you have the most unshakable certainty about where humanity is headed right now?
Immortality, the complete resurrection of the immortal genome or DNA, which is the angelic indigo. Ascension is a biological process and will be seen to be a biological process. It is not a spiritualized, phenomenological process that's kind of abstract and, light morphing in. No, it's a biological process, and we'll be bearing witness to that in our age. Anyone alive today and this year, next year, the year after, will be alive in 300, 400, 500 years to come. That's with us already. The technology is already with us. But the degree to which we are able to receive the benediction of the technological innovations will depend on the degree to which we are able to also dismantle this satanic technology called government, which is standing in the way of those innovations and technologies getting into our communities. So that's a bit of a process there, but not in the jurisdictions that we are establishing within the new Earth.
And Sacha, for the last question I have for you today is, after everything that you've witnessed, after everything that you've uncovered, seeing where it all connects, what keeps your heart open when you approach and bridge all of these subjects?
That's probably the one question I can't answer. So, I mean, I could construe an answer to try and satisfy the question, but that would be a lie. No, I can't answer that one. I think that to become intoxicated, fully intoxicated into the integrity of one's mission, if one is lucky enough to assume the mantle of a divine mission, and I believe that we all are capable of that, and I believe that we all do have a divine mission, but I do not believe for 1 second that we all assume the mantle of that divine mission. But to assume the mantle of our divine mission and to become intoxicated into the integrity of that mission becomes its own medicine. That becomes its own inertia. And it's not something which can actually step outside of itself and look at itself, because you're too busy being intoxicated in the living principle of the thing. And that's the only way I can describe the function of my existence has become that. So I still move and dance and play as a normal idiot human being and fuck up and make all sorts of mistakes and fall over and bang my head. I'm hobbling around right now because I was stupid enough to stand on a piece of glass a few days ago, and I allowed my retina to detach about a week ago as well. So I've been sparkling vision in the left eye for the last week. I'm filled with all the same usual fallibilities and foibles of everyone, but every time something occurs to me, I see the symbology of it, and I understand that it's a sign. Slow down, calibrate, change, orient, pivot, course correct, and it's always a benediction. It's always a blessing. But that's the process of being intoxicated into the integrity of one's own mission, if one's lucky enough to own it.
Well, thank you, brother, for acknowledging and also taking on that mantle of your own divine mission, also being an inspiration for all of those that feel it within themselves that they have a mission that they can even go down that pathway toward. And so you bring a lot of optimism for me in where the new earth is headed, not just with the words that you're speaking, but actually the pure action that you are going into with these initiatives, and the courage it takes to be able to go against the grain for so many years, receive all this criticism and backlash from the institutions because they don't want this world to change. And so we need more people on the front lines, not just talking about the shift, but actually building what is next. So thank you, brother. I see you. I can't wait to meet you in person. This has been a really, really powerful conversation. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Emilio. Thank you, my brother. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.